Battlefield games have been predicting the future with concerning levels of accuracy. Conspiracy theorists take note. From their dark war predictions to natural disasters, DICE seem to know something we don't. Let's just hope that Battlefield 2042's bipedal murder robots aren't going to be dang it, China. Come on, don't give it a gun. DICE, please. Let's talk about 10 different times Battlefield games predicted the future. And also, there are some dark stories in here. So while the coincidence here is fascinating at times, let's remember that some of these real-life events are in fact tragedies. Getting right into it with the most recent example, we have Battlefield's long-running fixation with the waters of Iran. If you played Battlefield 2 or Battlefield 3, you probably remember the maps Gulf of Oman and Karg Island. Back then, they just felt like classic Battlefield maps, wide open coastlines teeming with infantry and armored vehicle mayhem. However, with the recent development of the war in Iran, these battlefield locations may become real battle locations in the very near future. Karg Island, the same location DICE turned into a major Battlefield 3 map, is not just some random Iranian island. It is a real, extremely high-value strategic site, described as the hub for about 90% of Iran's oil exports. U.S. forces struck military targets on Karg Island on March 14th, mere weeks ago, and there are now reports saying that the U.S. is considering seizing the island itself. An extremely similar situation to what has been portrayed in the Battlefield games. Now, predicting military conflict is one thing for a military-based game, but DICE also have a penchant for predicting the results of climate change. The flood zone map in Battlefield 4 is set in China, and its whole gimmick is a destructible levee that floods the entire map when it's destroyed. It turns this dense urban battlefield into something that suddenly feels half city fight, half naval combat arena. In Battlefield lore, the map is explicitly set in the year 2020, which is where the comparison to real life gets, well, a little too real. In 2020, we saw massive flooding across southern China, including in Chongqing, which is essentially where this map is based. The floods were described as the worst since at least 1998, and by mid-August, they had affected 63 million people across China. By the end of June alone, flooding had already displaced 744,000 people across 26 different provinces. Some of the footage and photos look like a direct comparison to the flood zone map. Now, floods aren't the only type of climate change DICE had a knack for predicting. How about supermassive storms? Battlefield 2042, while often considered the ugly duckling of the franchise, certainly predicted some pretty crazy stuff. In the lore of 2042, climate change has caused superstorms to destroy huge regions of the world, plunging everything into absolute chaos. But one of the storms, specifically Category 6 hurricanes, were a key element in 2042's gameplay. Over several maps, these massive hurricanes spawn and roam the map, launching players and vehicles into the air. In the real world, we have just started getting storms that could potentially be classified as Category 6, with wind speeds surpassing the Cat 5 rating of sustained winds between 157 to 192 miles per hour. Recent research suggests that as ocean temperatures rise, hurricanes are getting strong enough to consistently exceed the current Category 5 scale. Some storms are now pushing beyond that threshold, entering what researchers describe as a new class of extreme intense storms. Can the next Battlefield game be fought over a utopian society where everyone is well-fed and rich? DICE, please wield your power responsibly. Now, this next one gets much heavier. In Battlefield 3, there's a campaign mission called Comrades. It takes place in Paris, where a terrorist group carries out a coordinated attack involving a chemical gas release inside of a stock exchange. Civilians are caught in it, police respond, and the entire situation escalates into a full-blown urban crisis. Now, at the time, it felt like just another intense cinematic Battlefield mission. But then, real life happened. On the same date that the Battlefield mission takes place, November 13th, Paris was hit by a series of coordinated terrorist attacks across the city. Suicide bombings, mass shootings, and hostage situations killed over 130 people and injured hundreds more, making it the deadliest attack in France in decades. The Battlefield 3 mission technically occurred 1 year prior to the real-life attacks, but the parallels are disturbing to say the least. Now, some of the events so far, you can absolutely see the connective thread, a military game portraying military conflicts that actually ended up happening. But what about freak accidents? The Rogue Transmission map in Battlefield 4 featured a gigantic radio telescope. The Big Levolution event for the map lets players bring down the support towers for that telescope, sending the suspended structure crashing into the dish. DICE took heavy inspiration for this map's design from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, which has a giant 305-meter radio telescope. Now, in Battlefield 4, this map launched back in 2013, but the game's fictional war takes place in 2020. Coming back to real life, when 2020 rolled around, 2 support cables failed on the Arecibo Observatory, and on December 1st, 2020, the suspended platform collapsed into the dish, destroying the telescope in a way that looked eerily similar to Battlefield 4's destruction event. Now sure, maybe it's just a coincidence, but Battlefield 4 has been a crazy predictor of future events in multiple different situations. This next one's a bit of a double whammy. In Battlefield 4, the Sunken Dragon map features a flooded Hong Kong with a wrecked floating restaurant inspired by the real-world Jumbo Kingdom restaurant, which was literally just a massive floating restaurant structure. On the map, the restaurant has run aground in a dried riverbed, which players can then flood. In real life, though, in 2020, the Jumbo Kingdom was towed out of Hong Kong. It ran into bad weather during its transit in the South China Sea, and it capsized near the Paracel Islands. Now, if you've played Battlefield 4, then you're definitely thinking, wait, isn't there also a map called Paracel Storm? And isn't that map located in the Paracel Islands, featuring a big ol' storm causing a ship to run aground? Yes, that is also in the game. So while the location of the restaurant capsizing isn't identical, there are some really weird similarities between what's happening in the game versus reality. Now, when it comes to global conflicts in the Battlefield franchise, there's always been an emphasis on oil and the Middle East. But one of the franchise's less predictable predictions was discovering oil in Antarctica. In Battlefield 2042, the breakaway map drops players in Antarctica and features a sprawling oil drilling operation carved directly into the ice. The centerpiece is a massive oil rig with pipelines and huge industrial platforms. And at the time, the idea was fun, but a bit of a stretch since oil hadn't yet been discovered in Antarctica. But in 2024, reports revealed that Russia had potentially identified enormous oil and gas reserves beneath the Antarctic seabed, estimated at around 511 billion barrels. What made it more notable is that the survey area overlaps with the British Antarctic Territory, a region that, under international agreements, isn't supposed to be used for resource extraction. Are we heading for some sort of frigid Arctic conflict, just like 2042 predicted? Ironically, 2042 may end up being one of the more realistic Battlefield games at the end of the day. Now, one of Battlefield's defining features is its sandbox gameplay. Driving helicopters through tunnels, base jumping off a mountain, C4 launching jeeps and tanks across the map. And ever since Battlefield 3 added player-controlled recon drones to the game, players have been using them as, well, literal flying bombs. You all know the move, don't pretend like you've never done it. You slap some C4 on a drone, fly it straight into a vehicle, detonate, and you got some easy kills. This ended up being incredibly effective in-game, so much so that it had to be nerfed in different titles along the way. And in a sad, dark twist of fate, this exact technique has basically become how many modern wars are going to be fought. In modern conflicts, especially in Ukraine, cheap, commercially available drones are being modified into weapons, often carrying explosives and flown directly into targets. We're talking about small drones, sometimes costing a few $100s, that are being used to destroy entire armored vehicles, hit soldiers directly, and even hit targets deep behind enemy lines. A huge part of this shift comes from improvisation and guerrilla tactics, where smaller forces can now use low-cost drones to level the playing field against larger armies. The crazy thing about this is that because Battlefield simulates semi-realistic combat scenarios and gives players freedom to do what they want in it, well, they naturally developed a technique that soldiers in the real world would also do. The sim accurately predicted the future. Now, this last prediction is also possibly one of the scariest: autonomous robots with guns. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos coming out of humanoid robots doing karate, sorting packages, dancing like maniacs, or, using guns. Many of these videos are real videos of robots doing real stuff. Now, in Battlefield 2042, there was a limited time event called War Machine that featured a mode called Override. In this mode, players had to fight waves of AI robots, and I think you can see where this is going. Now, to be clear, there's been a lot of videos of Chinese robots using guns. These have been outed as fake. They were made to look like official Chinese state media, and they even used the common bipedal robots that China has been showing for other demonstrations, so it looked really real and scary. But thankfully, at least for now, this hasn't happened yet. So while 2042 has at least predicted a AI robot with gun fake video, it's not that far off from where it seems like we are inevitably heading. Robots with some insane capabilities are very much real. It just seems like a matter of time before the government starts using autonomous combat robots. Unitree, one of China's premier robotics companies, has already provided their designs for testing by the US Marines and Ukraine's armored forces. There's even reports suggesting that China is using these humanoid robots for border patrol, surveillance, and security. All I can say is the Terminator movies were supposed to be a cautionary tale, not a guideline for the future. Battlefield has always grounded itself in reality, real locations, real technology, real geopolitical tension, but over and over again, the writers for Battlefield games have proven themselves to be incredibly on point. Their predictions of future conflicts, future technology, and even future ecology has been alarmingly realistic. At this point, I feel like I should be asking DICE for some stock advice. The next time they launch a futuristic Battlefield game, I'm going to pay a little closer attention to the tech and future predictions going on. What do you guys think about all of these Battlefield predictions? Lucky guesses, or does the design team know something we don't? Let me know in the comments. And up next, check out this video on Battlefield's best large-scale maps. One of the best things about Battlefield is its scale, and these maps remind us of why it is so fun. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Levelcap, signing off.